He is our Jags Beat Reporter, Hayes Carlyon here on 1010XL. His blog's presented by Mr. Reuter on 1010XL.com. And Hayes, last night, pretty tough performance for the Jags against the Bucs in their second preseason game. And you put out an article saying it may be time to move on from Blake Bortles if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I think it is time, and I was wrong. I thought Blake would have a good year this year, the best year that he's had at least. And I thought the Jaguars, were wise not to really go out seeing what was on the free agent market, seeing, what was in the draft. I thought it was smart to give Bortles one more opportunity. He hasn't done anything with it. And I think at this point, the Jaguars would be better served to move on. I think it's clear that Blake Bortles is never going to become the quarterback that we saw in 2015 when he threw a franchise record 35 touchdowns. And at this point, with that fifth-year player option there that could cost the team $19 million if he gets injured, because that's how it gets guaranteed, I just think at this point the Jaguars would be better off releasing Bortles and moving on.
Well, and Doug Marrone kind of made a similar statement, not the release part of Blake Bortles, but he did in fact say last night after the game against the Bucs that QB competition's wide open now. He's going to look for someone that's going to lead that offense, and it's a little interesting that he said that after the second preseason game, but as Jags fans know, and as you know for covering the team for the past few years, they've seen enough.
They've seen enough, and I think Doug Marrone has seen enough. We saw this start at the beginning of the week on Sunday at practice, where Blake threw a couple interceptions and was pulled from the practice for Chad Henne. And Doug Marrone came out and said, well, it was a pitch count. Then he came out a day later and said, well, his arm looked tired. But I think that was sort of the start of this. And Blake just simply played awful against Tampa Bay. I mean, he's missing open receivers. You just can't do that in the NFL. I mean, occasionally, sure, it's going to happen. These guys aren't robots. But Blake is just missing way too often. And the one to Allen Robinson that he underthrew, there's probably 70 Division I college quarterbacks that can make that throw. So Blake Bortles is in a really bad place right now. And I think there's an old NFL adage when it comes to quarterbacks. As soon as you open up the competition, I think what that tells you is whoever was starting is done. And I think Blake Bortles is done. I think Chad Henne will start week 3 of the preseason against Carolina. And I think that he's probably going to start week 1 at Houston, because I just think at this point, if you're the Jaguars, why would you risk putting Bortles out there and him suffering an injury that's going to make it impossible for him to pass a physical in March, therefore guaranteeing his $19 million next year? I don't think you can even take a 1 in 100 chance of that happening and then having to explain that to Jaguars owner Shad Khan. So I think Blake Bortles has to be done here. And I think they're going to have to reluctantly turn this over to Chad Henne.
Now, and you kind of answered my next question I was asking, because I was going to ask, so what's next? Obviously, you said Chad Henne is going to be the starter. We've seen some of the fans on Twitter and on social media asking to go out and bring someone else in. Is that a possibility, or is it just too late in the game now with there only being 2 weeks remaining in the preseason before the regular season starts up?
I don't think it's too late. If you go get a guy that's, played a good amount of football, has a number of starts in this league under his belt, I think, veterans can come in and learn the system quickly enough to be ready for week 1. But having said that, I think when you look at how Henne has performed in training camp, I think this is the best that he's looked, albeit not saying a ton, but I think it's the best that he's looked in the last 4 years. So we saw it Thursday night. I mean, he had 2 passes that should have been touchdowns. Keelan Cole drops a really good pass, and then he makes an absolutely brilliant throw, threads the needle to Allen Robinson. He can't come down with it. So I think we've seen that from Chad Henne. He's been playing pretty well. So I don't know that there's a guy out there that they can bring in that would immediately unseat Chad Henne, but I do think they should go get a journeyman that can come in, compete with Brandon Allen for that backup spot. And if Chad Henne starts to flounder as the season wears on, then you can go ahead and turn it over to the veteran. Obviously, there's going to be talk of Colin Kaepernick. From a football purely only standpoint, he'd be the perfect solution. I just don't think this franchise at this point is going to take the public backlash that would come with signing Kaepernick.
All right, he is Hayes Carlyon, our Jags Beat Reporter, and you also hear him on The Frangie Show every weekday afternoon here on your flagship station for the Jags, 1010XL and 92.5 FM. And again, you can also read his Jaguars blog on 1010XL.com, presented by Mr. Rooter. Hayes, good talking to you.
Thank you.